Welcome to episode 2 of our OR Talks podcast. Today we'll be introducing 2 guest speakers, ooh, exciting, to discuss a never give up mindset and answering all your VAT questions. We've had many of those. So without further ado, here are your hosts, Neil Seeger
and Mark Jovanovic.
This episode has 2 parts. To begin, we'll be discussing motivational topics for Never Give Up Day. But if you'd like to get straight into the facts and hear about VAT and hear from our VAT specialist, please skip to 90 minutes 30 seconds. So, you've probably noticed we've got a little guest with us today. She's one of our associate partners. Do you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Rachel Smith. I'm one of the associate partners here, and I'm now being interviewed by Phil and Holly on this morning.
Don't confuse them.
I'm not telling you which one's Phil and which one's Holly though.
You have to now, you've got no choice.
Good identified, yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be Neil's Phil.
Yeah.
Right, okay, well that's because I'm the mature one. That's what I'm going with. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I'm doing as I'm told.
So Rachel's very kindly said she's going to come in with us today to answer a couple of questions about your career from apprentice all the way up to associate partner, what has been involved in that and what you do to date. So where did you start?
So my journey started obviously 5 years ago. 19 years I've been at OR.
No.
So yeah, clearly.
You're 21.
That's what I'm saying. I've been here a few years now, 5.
It's 2 decades nearly.
All right. Oh, okay, I'm not going to be here for my 20th. So I came in fresh-faced 18-year-old, straight from my A-levels, and I was lucky enough to get an interview at our Bromsgrove office with Julian Dyer, who's one of our senior partners. So completed my A-levels, and I've always liked maths, always liked problem solving. So I thought, right, what's out there? So all my Drutter came up. Off I went in for my little interview, first one I'd ever had, and it went really well. Had a good interview with Julian. Don't know if I should say this or not, but Julian said to me I was the best candidate he'd had that week. Of all the candidates that he'd had, I was the best one.
You're the only one that week as well.
That is exactly what he told me. So I get the job, I start, and Julian admitted to me that I was the only candidate he'd had. But lucky for him, I'm still here 19 years on. So I absolutely love my job. I love OR, it's absolutely amazing. So many opportunities. And it's quite hard because you go from your A-levels straight into a job. And my first thought was, oh great, I've got a job, start earning some money and don't have to do any more exams. And then boom, I soon realised another 7 years to go. But what I loved was the support that I got of learning on the job. And then also they obviously put me through my exams, was just second to none. So for me, I always knew the career I wanted to go into because I quite like numbers, problem solving. So it was the right decision. So I started my job and I went through the path of AAT. I'd never been to university, got quite good A-level results, so I started my AAT. But what it helped me do was to learn on the job and then also get some downtime to study. It was just amazing because the balance was sort of good. So I did my AAT, progressed through, and then decided to do ACCA, which was another step up again. But again, the support that I got on the job. So at this point, I've completed my AAT, I've done 3 years, so I'm actually on the job doing really well at that point. I'm learning a lot. I'd started dealing with a lot of clients where I had to do a lot of accounts from scratch. And then as I progressed through, did my ACCA, that took me 4 years, became fully qualified. And I've moved through the practice
I've got a question.
Oh yeah,
with your study,
yes.
Was that self-study? Was that at a college? Was that at a university? How did you study?
Yeah, so back in the day, I used to get a day release. It sounds a bit strange, doesn't it?
Day release.
Day release. So I used to go off to Bromsgrove College and I used to do my AAT there. And you'd get like the whole day off to go and do that. And then I'd sit my exams, sort of like a school academic year really, sit my exams, and then that was my AAT, and then ACCA was a little bit different because we use Kaplan, which is the same as now.
Okay.
And that was more a switch between, sometimes I'd do a few days there, and then I'd come into the office, and then that's how I did that. But it was really, really tough, and you have to really, really dedicate your time.
Yeah, you are in, aren't you, with the study?
Yeah, I think you've got to understand when you're taking on a career which gives you amazing rewards is that you've got to personally invest your time. So the company will give you a lot of support, but you've got to be quite self-driven and quite self-motivated. And you've got to understand that it's okay to get things wrong, or it's okay that you might struggle throughout some papers. So I've never failed anything in my life before. I'd always passed things, done things quite well.
Yeah.
And when I started my ACCA, I did actually fail 2 of my papers.
No, you never failed. No,
I did.
I don't believe you. Do not believe you.
I've told everybody now.
Should we scratch that bit out? Or should
Yeah,
that
no,
bit in?
we'll have it in. We'll have it in. It's fine, because you have to sometimes fail or do something wrong to then learn and get it right. So that for me has been massive in my career.
So anyone listening that started listening to hear about VAT questions and wonders why we're talking about apprenticeships, well, actually, because the theme of it's never give up, and hence you never gave up.
No.
And do you know what? I didn't know. I didn't actually know you.
Do you not know?
Never,
I'm letting all my secrets
ever.
out now.
Never.
And I remember I got ever so upset because my exam results came through, and poor Julian, he had to comfort me. He was like, Rachel, you're 21 years old. You will fail things sometimes, and you have to learn to get back up and keep going. So I did.
It's true, that's how you respond to the failure, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Afterwards, isn't it? That's what matters.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Motivates you, doesn't it? It drives you on.
Yeah, and that's why part of the reason I love doing the job I do, because I like to help people, and I like to watch people develop and do well in their job. Because I've been in the practice for so long and grown through myself, I like to reinvest that into who we're bringing through. And that's a big thing for me. But it's not just your external training, it's here as well. How I've progressed internally here isn't just down to what we've done from a external training point of view.
On the job training.
Yes.
So when you were studying with other people at the same time, at the same level as you, or?
Yeah, I was at first. So when I did my AAT, it was quite good because you bounce off each other, and we were all supporting each other, which was great. And I found AAT, I think because of going and doing my A levels into AAT, I found it not too bad. It was okay. You have to put the work in, but it was fine. Then I got a bit of a shock when I started ACCA because it's just a whole other level up again. And my manager at the time, we were both sort of doing it, and it was really nice to have somebody to bounce off. And then because I had my little slip, I ended up carrying on by myself then. But I'm quite self-driven, I'm quite self-motivated, and I knew when everyone was going out, I remember everyone was going out and enjoying themselves, I was like, no, I can't, I've got to do my exams.
Yeah.
But now, further on down the line, I'm sort of getting the benefits of that.
So you've obviously finished your exams, got qualified,
Yeah.
and then so where did you go from there?
Yeah, so when I qualified, my experience matched where my qualification was. So I was a good senior level in the practice, and I was preparing accounts, putting some of them through to the partner, so they would then deal with the clients. And I'm quite driven, I'm quite ambitious, so I thought I need to push myself on now. And I was always, when I was training, I always thought when you're qualified, you've done it, you've done it now, you've made it. And actually I had a real big lesson to learn. So Pete Ormrod, he said to me at the time, actually, Rachel, you're just starting your career now. You've not done it all. You've got a lot to learn. And I thought, that's great. So because I wasn't studying, I was solely focused on more of on the job training. So I then became a manager, and that's where I started to review accounts and look at different sort of larger accounts and get a little bit more exposure. And then I progressed my career through managing people. Took on a team, went off and had my children, so I had a little break. I wouldn't say break, probably a difficult period, but I had 9 months off my first child, came back, straight back in, still reviewing accounts. Then I went off for my second child, and then I stopped after that. And then I came back, and I was lucky enough that I got the position to oversee sort of the whole accounts team, and I was enjoying my role. And the partners have just always been so supportive in that you don't have to stick through one path. So when I came back after having my second child, I was a bit of a crossroads in my life because I sort of got to an age where I wasn't too sure what I enjoyed. I wasn't too sure where I was going to go, and I didn't know what to do. So I thought, well, okay, let's have a reassess. And I'm lucky enough here that people listened and they thought, well, what am I good at? What do I need some help at? So I decided that I'm going to keep going and I'm going to keep pushing, and that's what I did. So I was lucky enough to go into an associate role. And I started to take on my own clients then in the practice, and started to advise my own clients and look after them. But in addition to that, I started to look at the commercial side of the business, and
So our business.
all my daughter, and look at what we did well and what we could improve on. And because I've been here for so long, I could use that skill set to, like I said, I want to make it a good place for everybody. We have a lot of clients come in, and I want to make sure we service those clients well, but at the same time we're doing it in the most effective way. So I went down a bit of a new path, lucky enough to progress through, and then I've become associate partner in the practice. So I pretty much look after majority of the departments here, but I also have my own client base as well. And I love it every day.
It's a varied role, isn't it? It's interesting.
Yeah, very varied.
Is any day ever the same?
No.
And when you turn up in the morning, do you ever expect what happens during that day?
No.
Yeah, so that's, but that doesn't, that makes it, so, and then the things you've learned on the job training effectively, that's not in your qualifications, actually, that helps you with us as a business, as my daughter, and also helps you advise your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a day I don't learn something new. There's not a day I go home where I've not enjoyed what I've done. Yeah, I have challenging days, like we all have challenging days, but I just love the job. I love the exposure. I love that no day is the same. I love that I could help a client, but at the same time I could help a staff member because they may be struggling with something, or everything's different. And what I love is there's just so much to learn, and we're all a team here, so I learn off everybody and every department.
I think that surprised a lot of people, you know. A lot of people think accountancy every day is exactly the same. So like, hearing you say that will just start surprising me.
And I think we all have a perception of an accountant, don't we? And
I don't know, do we? What's the perception of an accountant?
I think it's not, I think it's a bit different to reality, but what I know is we like to help people, and I love to drive people's businesses with them and help them. Anything we can do to try and help that. But I think how we've grown here as a practice, what we do internally also helps us then with advising our clients externally.
Absolutely, we learn from our own successes and our own failures as well.
Yeah, because we're a business like them, aren't we, at the end of the day? So
I think what I would say is never be afraid to make a decision and get it slightly wrong, because otherwise then you do give up, and the easy thing to do is to just give up. And if I'd have done that, then nearly 20 years on, I wouldn't have the career that I love and I enjoy. But to get to where I am today, it's taken a lot of hard work and sacrifices too.
It's not all been plain sailing.
No.
I think sometimes people do have this perception that accountants do have it easy and we just sort of bob along and it's all right. But actually, we do have our own challenges and our own, don't we?
Yeah.
With exams, with business, with everything, really. I think COVID probably showed that a lot for a lot of people, and I'm sure like entrepreneurs as much as we did, we had to make a lot of changes, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last 2 years, I think for everybody it's been a challenging time, but what it's done is I think it's made as a business us stronger, and I think individually, I think it gives you even more fight to get back up. And I've loved helping all of our clients as well, because some have sailed through and some have found it challenging, and I think having a team around you that have the same mindset, it just drives you forward.
Yeah, I think it does, doesn't it? And I think that's one of the big things here. We've got such an amazing team, and no matter what level you are, whether you're a partner, whether you're an apprentice, all the way through, everyone is one team, and we're all here for the same cause, aren't we? Ultimately.
Definitely. And you going through every stage as well probably helps as well, because you know what it's like to be at that level. You've gone all the way through.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing, isn't it? When you've done it yourself, you really can help and advise, and other people, you can understand what they're working towards. What I would say is this career of accountancy, taxation, audit, you really can't give up, because there's so many times for your career you feel like the easier option is to. But it's a great career, great opportunities, and I love every part of it. So
if I was at school and I wanted to become an accountant, what would you tell me the best part of your job is?
Oh, I like that. I'd say probably what I'd say now would have been different to back then. And I'd say if you're somebody that likes problem solving, and not scared to try and find a solution, that's what accountancy actually is. It isn't just sitting adding up on a calculator, is what a lot of people think.
People think it's just numbers, don't they?
Yeah. And I think you have to have a lot of self-drive and a lot of self-motivation. And at that age, for me, I went into it because I really enjoyed numbers, I enjoyed people. And I think with accountancy, you get a lot of opportunity in practice to speak to a lot of different people, and I think it's good. I'm quite a people person, so for me that was good, but equally there's lots of different routes for you, so
it's not all client facing. If the opportunity is there to be client facing once you get to a certain level, but I think that from my point of view, I think that we've got, some people are very, very good people. Some people are okay with people, but actually are probably more technically gifted than maybe myself. I don't know about you. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Yeah, I think as accountancy, if you've got any interest, it's just have a look at it. Look online, look at AAT, look at ACCA, look at ACA, look at local practices. Just see what's out there, because it's not always what you think. And don't be scared to go and have a look.
That's a righteous top tip. It's not always what you think.
No, not always what you think.
It's not. It's
a little bit like today with you guys.
What, are you talking to Phil or Holly there?
Oh, I'm not. I'd like to say.
No, I think you're right, to be fair, and it is definitely it's a profession, it's a career. It's not a 5-minute thing, is it?
No.
And actually, at any point, you don't have to always go fully chartered to be successful.
No, absolutely
not. That's one thing that when I joined, I didn't. When I joined the profession, I didn't know that.
No.
I thought you had to be chartered to be successful, and you don't.
Yeah, I think I didn't really understand what accountancy is. I think it's really difficult, isn't it, at 16, 18 to know what accounts is. So I think you've just got to be, I would say, open-minded and give yourself time to adapt from sort of a school and college environment to a work environment. It takes time, but you're never on your own. If you join a firm, like us and many others out there, it's having the support network is really key. That's what's important, and just give it a go, and you might enjoy it.
But there's so many different avenues, even if accountancy's, because accountancy, you've got then taxation, then you've got audit, and you've got other areas, then you've got other areas of the business that are accountancy, but aren't necessarily, the mainstream.
What you think of straight away, is it? No. Like, when I started, I didn't really know you could specialise just in tax. You just think it's a general.
You don't know, do you? Yeah. I mean, I did for myself. Like I said, I'm accounts generally, but I have done some audit, which people again probably don't know about me here. As a sort of semi-senior developer through, I did have a go and do a few audits. So I've had a go doing that side of things. Obviously, I've been heavily involved in personal tax and corporate tax, and it's nice to just touch on lots of areas, and you don't always have to specialise down one route, but equally you can if that's what you're looking to. But you've just got to be open-minded throughout your whole career, and you can't always know where. If someone had said to me sort of 19 years ago, I'd be here today, what I'm doing today, I wouldn't have known that.
19 years ago.
I would have been giving you age, right?
Literally, I'm there like this.
Yeah. You need to
I've run out of fingers now. I'm on my toes now.
But yeah, I wouldn't have known I'd be doing the role I'm doing, and that's my point. Just don't give up and be open-minded to different things.
Yeah, and you can never, from the day you walk through, I agree with your point as well, from the day you walk through the door to, you never know where you're going to be in your career, because actually there are so many different opportunities, so many different forks in the road. We can go either way. It doesn't matter which way you go, you'll be successful either way, but there's no right or wrong.
No,
and that's what's so good about our career and profession, I think. There's so many different avenues and different ways you can go.
Opportunities always opening up, especially as we're always growing, aren't we? So
that's it. There's always new clients, there's always more work, there's always more opportunity to learn, and look at the three of us here today, we all do slightly different roles, but we all bring something different to the table, don't we? But we're all there and support each other, so
absolutely. And that's the blend, isn't it? It's the blend. That's what makes the dream work, isn't it?
Exactly.
Right? Teamwork.
I'm sure I've spoken enough now.
That's well.
Literally.
That means we've got to do some work then.
It's like, yeah, we're actually going to talk, and
Yeah,
you don't
come
hear
on,
our voices anymore, do you, really?
Yeah, I've got work to do now, guys. Come on.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I think that's probably summarised your career in the apprenticeships within Almighty Rutter and your journey.
Probably. And the other thing I didn't say, was obviously our apprenticeships. But obviously, there's, at any point in a career, we do also take people on here that may have decided a career change. And later on through their journey, they may decide they want to go into accountancy. That's also open here. And graduates as well. We do a graduate scheme too.
Oh, do we?
I just thought I'd touch on that just as I'm about to go.
Oh, so that's Rachel's party line is an advertising.
Basically, you have lots of opportunities. So if ever anyone's thinking about the accountancy career, audit, taxation, then
or even if they're already qualified.
Yeah.
We've got opportunities for qualified, not just apprentices. So get in touch if you want to talk about apprenticeships then. And have a chat with Rach.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have you got any inspirational quotes before you go?
Oh, I'm
about never giving up.
Oh, Neil, you can't be asking me for inspirational quotes.
You must have one.
Oh, I think I'm just inspirational
Well,
myself. I don't think I need a quote, do I?
I mean, you were supposed to prepare one as well, Neil.
Yeah, I was.
You two are the ones on the podcast. I'm just inspirational as a person.
I've already done mine. Teamwork makes the dream work. That is my inspirational quote.
Well, you stole that from me this morning, guys. So
well, I'm not having
that would have been mine.
No, I'm not having that. So, Mark, Scott, go on.
Mine would be from like the New Zealand All Blacks because I love my sport. So and I just love their ideology and how they've carried on being successful. So they have these like 15 mantras that they go through to like keep themselves at the top. And one of them is when you're on top of your game, change your game.
Like that.
So you don't rest on your laurels, you continually improve.
No, thank you for talking to us, right? We really do appreciate it. Really appreciate it. So we'll be on to our nice VAT questions.
Don't worry. It's time for me to go,
guys.
Don't
worry. That's not you, but no, we appreciate your time.
No problem.
So that was Rachel, our associate partner, discussing her never give up mindset. If you're enjoying our OR Talks podcast, please hit subscribe or leave us a review to let everyone else know how amazing we are. Okay, let's welcome our second guest. Hi everyone. So you've probably seen that we've swapped Rachel for David.
Yeah, much more attractive.
If you're watching the video, my apologies. If you're not watching the video, we'll reserve comment on that one.
Yeah.
So David's a very lovely VAT friend who knows a little bit about VAT.
Just a little bit, yeah.
A little bit.
We're going to find out now, aren't
we?
we?
A little bit, yeah.
Don't ask me anything I don't know, which could be quite a lot.
So if it's not on the script, you're no. It's alright, it's on the wall behind the camera. So I've got loads of answers written on there. All you've got to do is you've got to match up the question and the answer together.
I can manage that. Yeah.
So what we thought we'd do is we've got a couple of questions that from myself, and we also asked people on our previous podcast to write in some questions.
Sure.
Okay, so we had quite a few come in, and what we've done is we've broken them down, and we've sort of asked the ones that we were asked sort of more commonly. So
I'm happy with that.
So do you want to ask a question, Mark?
Yeah. So let's start nice and easy. What is VAT?
Oh blimey, how long have we got? We're going to
brief. We've only got half an hour, so
have a break now. VAT is basically, it was something that was introduced back in 1973, and it's really a tax on transactions. Really, it's supposed to be a tax on the final consumer. So most things that you buy as an individual will have VAT on. There are certain exceptions which I won't bore you with now, but generally speaking, it's a consumption tax. So anybody who goes out and buys something, generally speaking, will be paying VAT, and VAT applies right through the chain. So it's like from, let's say, a manufacturer to a wholesaler to a retailer, and then to you as an individual. So VAT is on that chain right the way through. And as I say, there are exceptions. Certain things, like if you take an example like food, generally there's no VAT on food or children's clothing or something like that. But generally speaking, VAT will be in that chain, and you'll end up paying normally 20% VAT. Yeah.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
No, it isn't. It isn't interesting.
It is interesting. It's a thing that we try to avoid, but we
I was
can't.
going to say, you can't escape it, is it?
No, I think that's it. And for any new business, they need to think about that. Obviously, for people, particularly businesses who are supplying to the final consumer, they need to think about how that's going to impact their business, because if they become VAT registered or have to become VAT registered, then of course it might bump their prices up quite considerably. So we try and make sure, obviously, that people who are thinking about registering for VAT don't jump in with both feet too early, particularly if they're in the retail sector or to the final consumer in some other way. But a normal VAT registered business will obviously be charging VAT and recovering VAT on their costs associated with that, and it's a fairly simple mechanism really, that they submit these figures normally 3 months to HMRC and say these are the VAT on my sales, these are the VAT on my purchases, and the difference is either paid or reclaimed with HMRC. So it's a fairly simple process, but people who are supplying to final consumers just need to think a little bit more.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I suppose it can make them uncompetitive if someone else isn't VAT registered in there.
Yeah, very much so. Like we deal a lot with, maybe a sole trader who's involved in, I don't know, he's got a plumbing business or something like that, and for them VAT registration's not great because suddenly their prices are going up and they don't want to do that, quite obviously, So, but they may have no choice. It depends if their business is doing well and it goes over the threshold of 85,000. Then they're forced into it anyway.
So the 85,000 is the threshold, is it? So
yeah,
that's your sales, isn't it? That's how much you sell.
It is, and it includes the 85,000 includes anything that will be subject to the standard rate of VAT or the reduced rate of VAT, or indeed anything at the zero rate. I mentioned the children's clothing and food and things like that. They all get wrapped up into that 85,000.
Yeah.
And if you hit that threshold for that combination, then you need to register, or at least think about registering. Yeah.
But if I've got something that's exempt from VAT, that's not included in that total.
No, that's a good point, because, for example, if you look at things like residential property letting, as an example, the income from that is exempt from VAT. So if that's your only source of income, you can't actually register for VAT because that income is just exempt. But if you are supplying things that are both taxable and exempt, you might still have to register if the taxable bit goes over the 85. And then you have a mix of things going on. So
just to complicate things, if
I know we would. So
if I was a car mechanic, for example, I had an MOT bay.
Yeah.
So I'm doing repair work on cars,
yes.
and I'm also doing MOTs on cars.
Yeah.
My MOTs are exempt from VAT.
Well, they're not. They're outside the scope of VAT, which is a different thing.
No, complicated things now.
I
thinking it was simple as that.
No, they're outside the scope. But to take your example, if I stick with the property sort of analogy, if you've got somebody who's, I don't know, let's say they're renting out commercial property, and they are charging VAT on the rent for that, which I can talk about in a bit. But if they're also doing residential property, they've got a mix of things going on there, because the residential is exempt and the other's VATable, and then you get into the realms of, they have to look at their VATable turnover, not the residential turnover.
Right. Okay.
So it's a bit of a mix.
Yeah. And so the 85,000 threshold then, is that on a rolling year or?
It is, and this is the other thing that people get confused with. Is you're quite right, Mark. It's they have to look at it every month on a rolling 12-month basis and go back 12 months to see have they hit the 85,000. It doesn't automatically mean that someone has to register for VAT if they hit the 85, but they have to then talk to someone. Let's say, for example, they've done a really big job during the year and it's pushed them over the 85,000, but the following year they'll fall back to where they were before, maybe 60, 70,000. They can apply then to HMRC and say, look, we've gone over the 85, but it's very much a one-off, and we're not going to do it again. So can we be exempted from registration? But they have to do that. They can't just carry on and ignore it.
Yeah.
Which most people do.
And that's where we're really lucky to have someone like you that we can come and ask a question to.
Yeah.
Because people don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
No.
So people will bury their head in the sand and just ignore that. But it is really important that we do apply that.
Oh no, absolutely, and you're right. I get quite a few inquiries like that saying, oh, I went over the limit 2 years ago, but I didn't do anything about it. What do I do now? And I'm saying, well, you've got a bit of a problem there because you haven't informed the revenue, and if they want to be difficult about it, they can say, they have a 30-day window in which to notify the revenue,
Right. Okay.
and if they don't do it, if the revenue want to be difficult, which they often are, then they can say, no, I'm sorry, you've got to be registered right from that period till now.
And pay all the VAT that they haven't probably charged their customers.
Exactly so.
All the way through.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So that is a problem.
Yeah. So like with any tax really, don't ignore it.
No, exactly. Yeah. No, don't ignore it. No. And again, that's a lot of the situations I get involved in is people not thinking about what they're doing, up front. So the registration thing is a good example of that, because people, I don't know why it is, but people don't often keep a real tally on that. They just, they get to the end of, they often think it's like either their accounting year or the tax year.
Yeah, I was going to say.
They look at different years and it's not, it's like you said, Mark, it's a rolling 12-month thing.
Yeah.
So they've got to be really careful. Yeah.
It's easy to miss, isn't it?
It is very easy to miss, yeah, it is.
So one of the questions we had come in was, do you pay VAT on things you buy if you're self-employed?
Do you pay VAT on? Yes, you do. Yeah. So if you're self-employed, you will. You'll pay. If we take the plumber as an example, if he's buying in materials and so on, then he'll be incurring VAT. He goes to the builders merchants or to Wix or wherever he wants to go, and he'll buy materials and he'll be paying VAT on that. And the only way he can get that VAT back is if he is VAT registered. So, but in some cases, it's still better for him if he's not over the 85,000 to absorb that as a cost. That's a gross cost, and he'll get some, hopefully get some tax relief on that as well. But the mind you, Tommy probably can't.
You need to hustle like Mark.
I was trying to pass it over.
We won't get that joke.
Pass it over.
But no, so you're right. Yeah, so he will pay VAT, and then he's got to look at that and think, well, if he's in a business where, let's take the old plumber as an example again. If he's not doing a lot of private work, if he's doing like a lot of commercial work, and if he registers even before he reaches the 85,000, if he's charging VAT, it won't really matter, because the business that he's charging it to will more than likely be able to recover it. So then he can register if he wants to voluntarily and get all of that back on his materials, and that would be better for him. So yeah, he needs to look at his customer base and think what's best for me and keep an eye on his turnover. But if he's supplying to business, it's probably best that he registers straight away to get the VAT back. And in fact, funnily enough, even if he hasn't registered for, let's say his turnover is like 70,000 and he hasn't registered, and he's doing most of his work for commercial clients. If we come to look at it, it may be possible for him to go back up to 4 years and register for that retrospectively, recover all of that on his materials, but he's got to then be able to agree that the customers will accept a late VAT charge on what they've paid him. But mostly they will, because they can recover it again.
Yes,
so no one's losing out. Yeah.
No, they're not losing out at all. So, but for the individual, he needs to look at his customer base, keep an eye on the 85,000. If he's doing business to business, then probably think about registering voluntarily. Yeah.
So, moving on to the next question. This plays on quite nicely.
All right.
So, someone decides they're going to register for VAT, or they've got to.
Yeah.
Can they then claim all the VAT back on all their costs, or is there anything they can't?
Yeah, no, there are some exceptions actually, Mark. There are some notable exceptions, which are, say for example, if they're going to buy a car to use in their business, then normally, unless it's a pool car, they can't recover the VAT on it. So there's a restriction that just says if you're going to use a car, except that if it's only for business use, there's potentially a way of recovering it. But if it's for a mixture of they're going to use it, in their business, they're going to use it privately, the rules just say you can't have any VAT back on the purchase of it. Different if they're going to lease it, they can get 50% of the VAT back on the leasing of it, but purchase is a no-no if they're going to use it privately.
Yeah.
And the other big one, I suppose, is, which you actually don't come across too much, but is business entertainment. If they decide they want to take you and Neil out for a slap-up meal.
Might be nice.
Which is unlikely, but you know.
We're happy. We're happy. An invitation to happen, by the way. We're happy. We'll even bring David as well.
Yeah. No, but if I went, I'd have to advise them they can't claim the VAT back on it.
We'll leave David there.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for the meal. See you later.
Yeah. So you just paid 20% on one meal that you can't claim. So yeah, they can't. They can't claim on business entertainment, and that goes for anything for. Normally, they can't claim for non-employees. There is an exception, strangely, I don't know why this is, but for overseas customers, they can claim, but nothing in the UK for non-employees. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Interesting. While we're on the subject of cars, what happens? Well, I've got two questions actually.
Yeah.
What my first one is, can I claim the VAT back on a van if I use it within my business?
Okay.
And if I use it privately as well?
Yes, is the answer. If they're buying a commercial vehicle, a van or a lorry or transit van or whatever it may be, then they can claim, as long as they get a proper VAT invoice, of course, that shows that there's VAT on the purchase of it, from a VAT registered supplier. Then the answer is yes. There's no restriction. Strangely, again, HMRC don't enforce, even though they might use it privately. They don't enforce that. They say, well, we'll allow you to claim the VAT in full and not account for any private use at all of the vehicle.
Interesting.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a close divide between, you know, you've obviously come across this, I'm sure, what is a car and what is a commercial.
I was going to ask that, yeah. So,
oh, yeah.
So a double cab pickup.
Yeah,
is always on the border, isn't it, with all taxes?
Yeah, absolutely, it is. Yeah, and then it'll come down to things like, you know, the actual weight, the roadside weight of the vehicle. I can't remember what the phrase is now. It's like
the payload, isn't it?
Payload. That was it. That was it. So it'll come down to what's the payload of the vehicle. That might tip it into being commercial. Yeah, and then you can claim the VAT. Whereas if it's the other side, you can't.
Nice and simple. That's, I'm glad we cleared that one up.
Everyone's got it.
And the other question, even though that was a two-pronged question, is can I claim the VAT back if my car is electric?
Ah, yeah. Now, I've had a few questions on this recently. I don't know why people suddenly think, I suppose because it's a fairly new concept, isn't it?
And they're trying to push it so much, aren't
they?
They are, very much. But the answer is no. It's same rules as for non-electric, really. So. They can if they for example have an electric charging point installed, say at their business, they can claim on that, or even at home they can get an apportionment of the VAT.
Just on the charging point.
Yeah. But not on the vehicle, unfortunately. If it's going to be used privately as well. Same rules.
So if it's a pool car, regardless if it's electric, diesel, petrol, or any other fuel you can put in it, you can claim it back.
You can claim it back, but you've got to be able to demonstrate that it is a pool car, because HMRC will ask exactly that. They'll ask for evidence that it's being used within the business and there's a restriction on it being used privately.
Yeah, and no one's got exclusive use of it.
No one's got exclusive use of it.
It's quite hard to
Very difficult, very difficult. Because people will say that to me. They'll say, "Oh well, I've bought a car. I've already got another car, and I'm going to use this purely for business." And I'll say, "Yeah, but you've got to be able to demonstrate that. And HMRC say, if there's any, not even have you used it privately, it's can you use it privately. So even if you haven't used it, bizarrely, they'll still say you can't have the VAT on it.
Yeah. No,
so, it's quite straight, that, isn't it? Really? It's a line, and go over that line. Then
it is very much, absolutely.
So there are benefits to electric cars, but not with VAT.
Not with VAT as usual. There's no benefits at all with VAT.
Spoil sport, David. Very much of a sport.
It's all bad news.
Although we will go into a later podcast with Mark, and we'll talk about actually the nice things about electric cars. But it's doom and gloom today, unfortunately.
We have got some TikToks coming out as well, which talk about electric cars. So you on TikTok, David? Or?
No, I'm not.
No, do us too, to be fair.
No, we're not. We will be though. Look out for those TikToks.
I shall look out for those. No, I'm not that savvy with TikTok, to be honest.
No, we'll get you on there.
Yeah.
You can talk about vans and cars and
people switching off.
I know if we put you on like a little dance or something.
Oh God.
So then, another question that's come in then is about VAT reverse charge and what that actually is.
Okay. Okay. Are you thinking? Well, there's quite a few reverse charges. Are you thinking of the one on the construction industry?
Domestic reverse charges.
Yes. This was I don't know why HMRC didn't do this some time ago, to be perfectly honest, because Particularly in the construction industry, a lot of businesses were acting fraudulently from a VAT point of view. So what they do is a contractor would send an invoice to another business with a false VAT number on it. It might even not be false. It might be one that another business has had before and has just been cancelled. And they'd use that VAT number, charge VAT to the business. As soon as they got the VAT, they'd disappear off the face of the earth, you know, and never pay that VAT over to HMRC. And that happened an awful lot. It's still happening, but it's happened an awful lot. So what they decided finally is they were going to say, if you're a subcontractor and you're supplying to another main contractor, for example, rather than you sending an invoice with VAT on it, which they might not get back, they've taken that away and said, if you're in the chain of transactions with a main contractor, you don't charge VAT, you tell the main contractor that it's this thing called a domestic reverse charge. The main contractor then has to account directly to HMRC for the VAT that would have been charged by you. So let's say you send an invoice that's £2,000 and there should be, excuse me, £400 worth of VAT on it. The main contractor now has to include that £400 on their VAT return as VAT payable to HMRC.
Okay.
They can also claim it back, so there's no net loss to the main contractor. But for the subcontractor, their invoices mustn't show VAT if they're in that chain, and that takes away the risk of the subcontractor not paying it.
So does that only count if I'm CIS registered?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's a good point to make, Neil, again, because there is, if you look on the HMRC website, there's some quite good advice on there about what's included and what isn't. And if you look at the CIS guide, because it's only transactions that are covered by CIS that are subject to the domestic reverse charge. So if you're unsure, there's a good guide on there. There's also a good CIS guide that you can look at what sort of transactions are covered under CIS. If you meet both of those, then you're in the domestic reverse charge. But if they're not covered by CIS, you're just under the normal VAT rules.
So, the way I've been looking at it, and you can please tell me if I'm wrong here. The way I see it in really, really simple terms.
Yeah.
Don't laugh. It's really simple.
Okay.
So if I've got an invoice, okay. So I'm a subcontract roofer, for example.
Okay.
I go and do it for a big contractor.
Yeah.
I raise my invoice. I put CIS on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Or deduct CIS, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah.
Or then that at that point, I'm VAT registered. There's no VAT, because it's reverse charge at that point.
Absolutely.
So just because a lot of people out there will invoice with materials and labour.
Yeah.
So the way I've seen it is if it's materials and labour, at that point, domestic reverse charge, I'll have a little bit of CIS on that invoice. But obviously I'll have materials on there as well. So at that point, am I domestic reverse chargeable or not?
You are, because they say it's one supply. So even under the CIS, there might be a slight difference. From the VAT point of view, they've said, that's a domestic reverse chargeable transaction because it's one supply.
Right,
it's all wrapped into one.
So so regardless if an invoice has got materials and labour on it, if I raised an invoice for labour and then materials, they're two separate supplies.
Two separate things.
Right. If it's all on one invoice, it's one simple.
Absolutely right.
Because a lot of people, that question comes in. I mean, to me, I don't know about you, Mark. It comes in a couple of times a week.
Oh, does it really?
It's really, and I never thought of wording it one supply. That's actually quite a good way of explaining it.
Yeah, I admit it is quite confusing. I must be honest. I get quite a few inquiries. People still don't really understand how it works. And main contractors and subcontractors are in dispute, saying, well, it's covered by domestic reverse charge, and the other one says no, it isn't. And but that's a good example, because that should be, if it's one supply, even actually if it's on separate invoices, if it's under one contract, for example, you can't artificially split it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I mean, if they're separate completely, then you're quite right. It doesn't, or the materials bit doesn't. But you can, if it's under one supply, then it normally gets wrapped into CIS and the domestic reverse charge.
Because then you end up having a battle between the subcontractor and the contractor, because the contractor's accountant says one thing and the subcontractor's accountant says another. So I'll be saying, well, actually, it's all reverse chargeable. Even though on the materials they're going to claim that back, obviously the subcontractor and the contractor won't, and they're saying no. It's all VAT. So then we end up at better. So the poor subcontractor going, well, I'm going to have to do it with the VAT because that's what I'm told to do. But then that's your first TikTok, I reckon. Do
you think so?
We can say here it is.
Here it is.
Ready
to go. Yeah, and you're right as well with the main contractor. You see, then, and I've had a number of disputes where they're saying, well, we shouldn't be paying VAT on this. The subcontractor says, well, I'm told I should be charging VAT.
Yeah.
And then the main contractor strictly speaking, can't recover that VAT because it shouldn't be charged in the first place. I know that sounds bizarre, but that's the way it is. And I mean, HMRC have been quite light on their feet with this. They've not really enforced it too much, but I think it's going to change. You know, I think they'll start coming after people and, you know, saying, well, it's been out there long enough. You know,
the longer things are out there, then they start clamping
down.
Don't
they do. So so maybe you're right. Yeah, I can dress up and do a TikTok thing.
Yeah, even nice, wouldn't it? Nice that.
Maybe leave out the dressing up.
Early on Friday.
Yeah. Weekend job.
So that is a really common question.
Yeah.
To be fair, I wish the guys sometimes from HMRG just said this case. That case. Because the guides are fantastic. But there's an awful lot of them.
There really is.
And people out there aren't going to read them. Obviously, we read them because we sort of have to. We're professionals. Whereas,
you're right. They're not going to. I mean, and so it's best if people just ask. You know, ask up front. You know, you're not sure. Just ask us a question, and we'll tell you. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah,
just drop us a WhatsApp.
So,
okay, well,
you've sort of touched on this a little bit already. To be fair, we talked about properties, and what about the option to tax and why it might be needed?
Oh, okay, yeah, no, that's a good question because the option to tax basically it's a mechanism that allows people to charge VAT on either like the sale of a commercial property or the letting of a commercial property. And why would you bother doing it? Well, it's because normally a sale of a property, a commercial property that's like more than 3 years old, or the letting of it if you're leasing it to someone, is exempt from VAT, so there's no VAT on the rent or the sale value. But that does normally then mean that you, as the person who's selling it or letting it, can't recover VAT on any costs that you've incurred if you've refurbished it or extended it or something. So the option to tax is a mechanism where a business can, and they have to do this, they have to get the permission normally of HMRC. They would write to HMRC and say, we want to opt to tax this particular property, and they would do that because they're going to be spending money on it, and you know, sometimes quite significant amounts of money. And it could be either they've purchased it with VAT on, or they're renovating it or extending it or refurbishing it or something. And in order to recover that VAT, they really need to opt to tax to do that. But it's a formal process. They can't just. A lot of people again just say, oh well, I'll charge VAT on the rent, but you can't do that. You have to go through HMRC and send them a formal notification.
Which we can also support with all that.
Oh no, absolutely, do a lot of that.
The same way you can.
Well, that's right.
I'm an apprentice.
That's not gallon sugar.
Yes, if I'm holding on fire, that's what I'm concerned about.
No, it is. It's something we do an awful lot of but again, it's a timing thing. You've got to be pretty quick with these things. You can't come to me like a year down the line and say, oh, I wanted to opt to tax to recover VAT on that property. It doesn't work like that. Again, you've got to do it within very, very strict time limits. And again, it's normally 30 days. You've got to notify HMRC. So best to talk it through with us really when you're in the process of thinking about it. I'm buying this property, or I'm going to buy this property, and then I'm going to let it out, or I'm going to sell it. Just come and have a chat to us, and I'll tell you exactly what you need to do and when. And we can do bits for you, obviously, get it sorted for you. Yeah.
Superb.
Yeah, it's a great service.
I haven't used it yet, but have you got feedback form?
Yes.
Just send it to the apprentice will sort it.
That's it.
You're going to be inundated after this.
To
help everyone.
I know, Too right, So when does the reduced rate of VAT apply to property?
Okay. There's a couple of examples, 2 or 3 actually. One that immediately springs to mind. If you have got a house that you intend to renovate, and you want to renovate it and then either sell it or let it out, as I said a minute ago, normally that sale or the letting of it will be exempt from VAT, so it stops you recovering any VAT on your costs really. But if that house has been, let's say, house or flat or whatever, has been empty for more than 2 years, and you can get evidence of that, and they will need to get evidence of that from like the local council normally, then what they can do is they can give that evidence to the contractor, and there's a certificate that they can get from a VAT notice 708. Give that to the contractor, and that basically says this qualifies for 5% rate of VAT and not 20. So if they can't recover that VAT anyway, it's immediately like a 15% saving, without doing anything very much. But they need to again do that very early on in the process, not much further down the line when they've started incurring the costs. So, and the other one is, on a similar vein, sticking with the analogy of the house, if it's a house and they say, right, I'm going to convert this house into, say, 2 flats, or even the other way around, because you're changing the number of residential units in that property, you can again do the same with the contractor. There's again the same certificate, or a variant on the certificate in that VAT notice 708. Send it to the contractor and say, this qualifies for 5% VAT, not 20. And again, it's just an immediate saving.
So what if I'm not necessarily, I own the house myself,
yeah,
and I decide not to go through a contractor, to go through myself,
yeah,
and I pull in, and I get the notice,
yeah,
and I get my suppliers come in, and my plasterer comes in and plasters my wall or whatever, and I claim that, and the invoice, it does me at 5%,
yeah,
that's fine. What happens when I go and buy things from B&Q and such like, and other places like that, because they'll invoice me at 20%.
They will. This is the problem. You're right there, Neil. If I go to a builder's merchant and just buy all the materials myself, they can't do anything about that. They have to charge me 20% VAT. What I say in that circumstance is, if it's commercially possible, if you're employing contractors then fitting that material, see if you can actually get them to buy the materials. If they're VAT registered, they can claim all of the VAT back on the materials at 20%, but when they supply and install them to you, they only have to charge 5%. So immediately again, there's a big saving.
That problem. So if I did do it, if I wasn't able to get a contract to do that, can I reclaim the 20, or can I only reclaim 5?
You can't reclaim any of it actually, potentially. So that's why I'm saying you need to get it down to 5 wherever you possibly can, just to reduce it. So the 5% will still be a cost.
Yeah.
But it's better than it being a 20% cost.
Yeah, definitely.
So and sometimes, I mean, businesses do set up their own, what I would call contracting business, to actually do exactly that. They'll buy in all the materials, they'll put all the labour through that company, and then supply the labour and materials at 5% to the end, their end company. You know what I mean? It can be done. You've got to be careful again with setting that up, but it can be done. But if you don't want to go down to those links, that's fine. But try and get a commercial deal where your contractor will buy the materials for you.
Yeah, because you can't reclaim that VAT
at
all because it's property, but you can pay less in cash terms because you're paying 5%.
Absolutely.
Right, I get it.
Absolutely. Yeah, spot on.
Excellent, thank you.
So sticking with property, can I sell a commercial building without charging VAT?
Yeah, you can actually. Yeah, if that building is more than 3 years old from completion, yeah, you can sell it without VAT on. That's not a problem. But we come back to the situation again about VAT recovery. There's 2 things. One is, if you're selling that property with no VAT on, if you've got any costs associated with that, let's say for example you decide to do some work to it before you sell it, or any legal fees or professional fees, you probably won't be able to recover that VAT. There might be a way, but normally you can't.
Okay.
The other thing you've got to be very careful about is something called capital goods scheme, because just to give you a very quick example, if I've bought a building and it's cost me more than 250 grand plus VAT to either have it constructed, or I buy it or refurbish it or extend it, that becomes something called a capital item, and that says you've got to look at the use of that building for the next 10 years. So if I occupy that building myself, and that's fine, I'm a fully VATable business, I recover VAT on it. But if I then decide to sell it, say after 5 years, I can sell it exempt of VAT because it's not a new building anymore. But the capital goods scheme says, yeah, but it's a 10-year adjustment period. You've used it for 5 years for a VATable purpose, but the next 5 years isn't.
Yeah.
So we'd like 50% of the VAT back on the original VAT that you claimed, which is a nasty surprise actually for a lot of people. They don't realise, and I get that a lot. People will say to me, "Oh, I've talked to my solicitor. He says, you don't have to charge VAT on this." And that you have to ask that second question.
Which is right at the start. At the surface of it, you have to charge your VAT because you don't.
Absolutely, no,
but
absolutely.
They're not thinking about the thing underneath it.
No, and they won't do. The solicitors, to be fair, won't do. They'll just say, "No, well, you've not opted to tax the building. It's more than 3 years old.
Yep.
Yeah, you're fine not to charge VAT.
It's like asking me for the solicitor bits. I wouldn't have a
Yeah,
clue.
yeah,
Or
no,
you,
no,
or
no,
you.
I wouldn't have a clue.
Actually,
No,
you know,
no,
exactly.
No.
We do what we do, they do what they do.
Exactly, we've all got our own
Yeah,
different bags,
yeah.
haven't we?
Yeah,
Definitely.
we
yeah.
work together, yeah. So.
But the other thing is, again, keep talking about timing, is a number of times I get asked to look at things like that on the day the property's being sold, and I'm thinking,
That's a surprise.
yes,
Commiseration.
well, this is it. You see, then you might still be in time to try and sort it out. Making an option to tax, but it has to be done obviously before the property is sold. So, yeah, please don't leave it to the last minute. Is the message, I think.
Yeah, I think that's been with everything.
So
Really.
literally, words out of mouth.
It is, I mean, not just VAT, anything really. Forward planning is essential, isn't
Absolutely.
it? You can spot potholes that are coming up, can't you?
Oh,
Avoid
absolutely.
mistakes.
Yeah. I much prefer that, I say, but it's normally, and I've had it with solicitors as well, just coming to me and saying, what's the VAT situation on this? We're completing this afternoon. And I'm saying, well, what am I supposed to do with that? But I can do something hopefully, but I don't want to do it that late.
Yeah.
It just gives me a headache.
Not really, yeah.
That's why I've lost all my hair, I was going to say. Yeah.
So, and this is becoming more and more common actually, and since we've obviously, since the EU stuff has happened, so what if we sell goods or services outside the UK?
Ooh, blimey.
Open a can of worms there,
That's a separate podcast, I think. That's, no, I mean, the rules have changed quite a lot, as you'll know. I mean, we effectively left the EU on the 1st of January 2021, and there have been various changes since. And basically, what it's done is all the old rules almost have gone out of the window, really.
Yeah.
So it's all right if you're like directly exporting goods to, let's say, to another business in the EU or the rest of the world. That's still broadly the same. You just get all the evidence of export from the UK and it's zero rated, and that's not a problem. Where the big problems have started to arise is, well, two things. One is where you're supplying business to consumer now, within the EU particularly. The rules have completely changed, and there are very strict, again, thresholds, financial thresholds that you have to look at as to whether you can A, charge UK VAT, or B, you have to register where the customer is situated. And it's more likely to be the latter. And the other thing is, if you hold stock somewhere else in Europe, you have to register for VAT there. There's no VAT registration threshold for a non-EU business. So as soon as first thing you sell for £1, you must be VAT registered. The other thing is, and it also potentially applies to the rest of the world as well, is that they might have to register for local sales taxes elsewhere, But the EU, it's a big problem, and the other one we come across a lot is, just to give a quick example, I won't go on for too long, but one where had a business in the UK, they said, oh yes, we've bought some goods in Italy, and we've asked the Italian supplier to send them straight to our customer in Germany, which is fine.
They don't handle the goods at all at that point.
No. And the thing is, they've bought from the supplier in Italy, and they've taken title to those goods in Italy. This is the UK customer. UK business, excuse me, and they then have an obligation to register for VAT in Italy because they're the ones supplying it to the customer in Germany, and they don't, and they think, but why should I have to do that? And
then left Europe.
Yeah,
the goods are still in Europe.
Still in Europe. Yeah, but we're out.
We're out. So it's not necessarily where the goods are.
No.
It's who takes legal ownership of those goods.
Yeah, absolutely.
In
Italy. Yeah, and it's a nightmare. And I've had that so many times. And then the Italian supplier, if they know what they're doing, will say, well, the goods have never, they've left Italy, but they've not gone to you, my customer in the UK. So I'm going to have to charge you Italian VAT here.
Yeah.
And then my client in the UK is saying, well, how can I get that VAT back? And it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. So again, they just have to be really careful with those sort of transactions where they're and it happens a lot commercially, where they're getting the goods sent from one EU supplier to another customer.
Yeah, it's very common.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's very much a case by case basis.
It is now, to be honest. That's why I say I could go on all day. I could go on all day. But, it is. It's a huge subject, and again, just talk to us at the beginning and say, well, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm thinking of doing, rather than trying to unravel it, which is a nightmare. just talk to us up front, and then we'll tell you exactly what you need to do, and then you can
get it right first time.
Or drop us a WhatsApp and we'll contact you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Oh, I don't know, I can't remember. What's the number, Mark?
01985
He's got it.
There we go.
He's got it.
We'll have to have him on a little recording at the start. And the other one, which is common, and it actually wasn't texted, it's one of my questions that comes up.
Yeah.
It comes up quite regular. So I've got a lot of businesses that are exceeding the VAT threshold.
Yeah.
Or they're doing like the business to. They're doing the example we gave earlier with the business, like the sub example we gave, registering. So if I've bought, I don't know, loads of tools and loads of equipment. I bought a van. So tools, equipment in a van. So I've literally bought those, and I've decided actually they've already bought them. They've come to see me, and I've said, we'd like to go back registered, please, because we'd like to because we're in that situation with the CIS reverse charges. Can they reclaim the VAT back on those tools and whatever they've bought?
That's a good question, because in that situation, again, like if that's the plumber again that we talked about earlier on, where if they register straight away, they'd have to start charging their customers VAT to get that VAT back on those. But there is a rule. It's a bit of a bizarre one, really. But if they keep a record of those purchases and they wait until they hit the £85,000 limit, if they do, they can go back and recover that VAT as it happens, as long as it's within 4 years of them registering for VAT. So they could get the best of both worlds, where they don't start charging VAT to their customers until they have to register at 85,000, and then they register then, and then they can go back, as long as they've got the evidence to support it, they can reclaim VAT on all those materials and the van and all that sort of stuff without any adjustment.
So what if I don't wait and I get to 60 and go, I'd like to register?
Again,
that rule still apply?
Yeah, it still applies. It's just the date that you decide to register, or you have to register.
Yeah,
you can still go back.
So, one more.
He's been thinking about this all night.
I've not seen your van and me tools. So what happens if I start off as a sole trader? I buy the equipment, I buy my tools and my van, and then they come along and see me. I'm at a limited company.
Okay.
And then they want to back register as a limited company, but use their van and tools from their sole trader. Can they claim it back on?
Problem then. Potentially, you can. There is a concession that HMRC, they're not very familiar with, but where it's essentially the same business, just change legal ownership, they might be able to, but generally speaking, HMRC will say no.
Different person.
Different legal person. Sorry, but that's, you can't do it. There is something hidden away in the VAT guidance that talks about potentially making a claim for VAT on those, but very often the answer is no.
Interesting, because I bet that happens more regularly than you think. Really, that.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's it is a problem, because HMRC see the two as quite distinct. Limited company, sole proprietor or partner, limited company, separate completely. So you can understand what they're doing.
But you understand why people would want to do that. Obviously, it's still the same van, it's still the same everything. It's just a different.
I mean, if they're going to do that, they might be best to if they're setting up a limited company, they might be best to register the sole proprietorship on a voluntary basis, and then transfer the VAT number into the limited company.
And then that way you get the best of both worlds, then, can't you? But again, case by case basis, isn't it?
That requires forward planning again.
Here we go. That's going on his t-shirt. The next podcast is on his t-shirt.
Yeah, that's right. Think ahead.
What's Mark's motto? Forward planning.
Don't leave it to the last minute.
But to be fair, that is all the questions I've got. Have you got any more, Mark?
I didn't say no. Unless you tell me I've missed some more.
No. I'll tell you off again. I promise.
I reckon it's you that skipped that.
Probably.
Of course, he's blaming me. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming on, David. We really do appreciate your comments and your thoughts.
No worries.
I've learned a lot. So
good.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I don't have any more questions either.
No, excellent.
Which is quite good. Not even any more I can make up.
No, but if anybody's got any, obviously they can get in touch, and one of the three of us can field them, and I'll get back to the people. There's not a problem.
So how can they get in touch, David?
Well, again, quoting the famous number
on the WhatsApp.
On the WhatsApp, the 01905 777 600, or you can email me at davidpegg@allrodrutter.co.uk, and that will get through to me, and I'll get back to you.
No, brilliant. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get you back on again.
Yeah. Oh yeah, any more questions?
I'm a string of them. Yeah. What about this?
We'll have 2 pages next time. Thank you very much. For episode 3, we will be answering all your questions on tax investigations and HMRC inquiries with a new guest. How exciting! To submit your questions, please text or WhatsApp our nice number 01905 777 600. All your questions will be answered anonymously.